Thanks so much indeed for joining us. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me, and good evening to your viewers.
I've heard you saying for some time that these elections should be delayed, and I guess the findings of the former Deputy Chief Justice are in line with your thinking.
Absolutely. I'm delighted that the former Deputy Chief Justice's committee came to a conclusion that the elections have got to be postponed. Of course, I would have been surprised if they had come to any other conclusion other than having to recommend that the elections be postponed to a period, to a date in the future. And then even though I had recommended that the elections be postponed until May, I'm still satisfied that at least a period has been given for the Commission and for the country to assist in terms of creating conditions conducive to free and fair elections.
What do you think was the most compelling argument that the Commission or the inquiry came up with?
Well, in my opinion, the fact that political parties, largely because the pandemic has created an environment where now the president has been forced to impose certain restrictions in order to try to contain this pandemic. That in itself has created an environment where it is not possible for the citizens to exercise their rights as contained within Section 19 of the Constitution, but also even the political parties are unable to exercise their political rights. Now, that on its own imposes a certain limitation on the capacity of the country really to ensure free and fair elections. And the Electoral Commission is, or rather has got an obligation in terms of the Constitution to ensure free and fair elections. So when the conditions do not exist for free and fair elections, then it means it would not be possible to proceed with electoral processes.
So what does the Electoral Commission do now? Because they actually are the ones that must decide the next step.
I've actually been saying that the role of the Electoral Commission is quite simple, in the sense that their role is to ensure free and fair elections. Now they've got a report. That report says conditions do not exist for free and fair elections. So they've got to approach a person who sets the date of elections, which is the Minister of Culture, and say to the Minister, even though you have the constitutional obligation and the right to determine the date of the elections, we are unable to have free and fair elections as a result of the current conditions. But you are the final arbiter in terms of the determination of the date of the elections. And then the Minister will then go to the Constitutional Court together with the IEC and armed with the report that Justice Moseneke has now given them, and say, on the basis of this report, we are saying that it is not possible to have free and fair elections.
Constitutionally, where do we stand? Because an administration has a term, and the Constitution is quite clear what then happens next. What does the country do?
Fortunately, as Justice Moseneke indicated, two possibilities. One would have been to go to Parliament, and Parliament would have to pass a legislation, 75% agreeing, and then 6 provinces also agree. But because we are living in a constitutional democracy, the custodian of our constitution is the Electoral Court, rather the Constitutional Court. So the Commission and the Minister can now approach the Constitutional Court and motivate for the postponement of the elections beyond the constitutionally stipulated period. And on the strength of the argument that they're going to be giving, the Constitutional Court will then grant them the permission to proceed accordingly.
All right, so the date March seems to be what's been mooted. Do you see that being likely? I guess it much depends on the COVID-19, how it plays out for the rest of the year.
Well, you may recall that I had actually suggested that the elections take place in May, and I had taken into consideration quite a number of factors. And I thought by that time maybe we would have reached as a country, significant number of people already vaccinated. But the former Deputy Chief Justice has made a determination of February. So hopefully by that time, a significant number of people would have been vaccinated, including the staff of the IEC. And on the basis of that, then the elections would then be able to proceed. But I think they cut it a little bit too tight. But, we will see how it goes. And hopefully we are able to have the elections within the period that is being suggested. But the final arbiter on this is actually going to be the Constitutional Court based on the recommendation of the minister as well as the IEC.
I know that you observe and consult on elections across the continent, and I was just wondering, perhaps, are there lessons from the South African experience that other countries on the continent can take on board? I know that there's a number of countries who are keen to run elections quite soon. Zambia's on the radar, isn't it?
The report of Justice Moseneke has taken into consideration quite a number of experiences of countries, and they've indicated, for instance, that India, as well as Brazil, which incidentally use electronic voting for their elections, have had a situation where the numbers of infections increased during the elections. Now, in the case of South Africa, I think there are quite a number of things that people can learn from other jurisdictions. One of those is the fact that we are moving into the elections during a period when there are very tight restrictions on the movement of people. Firstly, the political gatherings have been banned, but also citizens have been confined to their homes. So it is going to be very interesting how the country navigates this challenge of people being confined to their homes and political gatherings being banned and still being able to have the elections. So there is no country in the world that has actually had elections conducted under these circumstances. So we'll see how it goes in the next few days, in the next few weeks and months. And perhaps there is a lot that other countries can learn from our own experiences.
Elections expert Terry Tselane, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and we'll be chatting again soon, no doubt. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.